Happening now, police press charges against the white homeowner who prosecutors say shot a black teenager after he rang the wrong doorbell. We're in Kansas City with the latest on the teen's condition and the new information we're learning about the shooting.
Plus, an Ohio grand jury chooses not to charge 8 police officers in the shooting death of a black man. Why jurors say the officers were justified in the killing, and the outrage across the city of Akron this morning.
And new this morning, Russian President Vladimir Putin makes a surprise visit to eastern Ukraine. We have the latest on Russia's efforts to rally its troops as Ukraine braces for more fighting.
Plus, a major cancer breakthrough. What we're learning about a vaccine trial for skin cancer.
Thanks so much for starting your day with us. I'm Zinklea Samwa.
And I'm Lindsay Reiser. Joe and Savannah are on assignment. Those stories and more in just a few minutes. But first, we want to begin with day one of the landmark defamation case involving Dominion Voting Systems and Fox. The trial is just now getting underway after a brief delay, and the outcome of this case could have far-reaching impacts. NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda joins us now from Wilmington, Delaware. So, Emily, you're just stepping out of the courthouse. Set at the scene for us. What's happening right now?
Okay, well, already we are getting a sense for just the high stakes in this trial merely by seeing the attorneys, the team of attorneys for both sides arriving to the courthouse within the last half hour or so. We saw roughly 30 lawyers with the Dominion team proceed into the courthouse, later followed by a team of more than a dozen Fox lawyers. As you mentioned, I was just inside, kind of just to get understand the setting of the courtroom before I had to step outside. All 7 rows already filled to watch this high stakes trial play out. First, what's going to be happening is the jury selection process will be finalized. Lawyers from both sides will have the opportunity to strike a handful of potential jurors, narrowing the pool down to 12 jurors and 12 alternates. Then they will be moving into opening arguments, and we expect to hear from Dominion's team alleging that Fox destroyed its reputation by its hosts and its guests, amplifying false claims of voter fraud, and that Dominion played some kind of role in rigging the 2020 presidential election. On the other side, we will hear from Fox defending its election coverage, saying they should be protected by the First Amendment, and they were merely reporting on extraordinary claims made by the then president. And I think I'm having some audio issues, so I might not be able to hear you guys, but I'm going to send it back to you.
All right, Emily, yeah, it appears we lost comms with you, but appreciate your reporting so much. Thank you.
Turning now to calls for justice growing in Kansas City, Missouri. This morning after 16-year-old Ralph Yarl was shot after ringing the wrong doorbell while trying to pick up his younger brothers. Kansas City police say the homeowner, 84-year-old Andrew Lester, who is white, is now facing 2 felony counts for the shooting.
A warrant was issued for Mr. Lester's arrest, and bond was set at $200,000.
NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa is in Kansas City, Missouri with the very latest. Maggie, good morning. So police have issued an arrest warrant for Andrew Lester. What do we know about him and the charges he's now facing?
Yeah, so at last check, Andrew Lester is still not in custody, Zinklea. Again, as you said, that arrest warrant is out, and we also have the probable cause warrant tied to those charges, tied to what we expect to be the looming arrest. And basically, Andrew Lester, as you said, is the white homeowner in this case. He told detectives per that probable cause warrant that he had never seen Ralph Yarl before, the 16-year-old, before Thursday night when this shooting happened. He told detectives that he said he was, quote, scared to death, and that he thought Ralph Yarl was trying to break into his home. That being said, prosecutors say that Yarl was shot through the glass door, the front door of Lester's home. And they also said, as you pointed out, that there is a racial component to this. Obviously, the charges now against Lester speak volumes as to how much they basically believe his story at this point. But we'll see how it plays out in St. Cloud.
And Maggie, to that point, the racial component, we know that the family has hired prominent civil rights attorneys Ben Crump and Lee Merritt. I know you spoke to one of them. What exactly did they tell you about the shooting?
Yeah, so we spoke to Lee Merritt yesterday, and he says, and this is really important, he says that Ralph Yarl rang the doorbell Thursday night and then did nothing else. He said there was no jiggling of the door handle. There was no yelling to anyone inside. Basically, in short, he says the teenager did not try to enter the home. And the reason that he says that is because of possible defenses, including self-defense type arguments like stand your ground or castle doctrine, they suspect that Lester might use. So here's more about what Lee Merritt, the attorney for Ralph Yarl and his family, told us about the moments leading up to Thursday's shooting. Take a listen.
As I understand it, the evidence that we have, Ralph simply rang the doorbell and waited for the person in the home to respond. He never used force. He never threatened force. He never appeared to have a weapon. Ralph's specific memory was first being fired upon, struck in the head, and going immediately to the ground. And while he was on the ground, he has a memory of being shot a second time.
And that second shot, according to Merritt and the family, was to Ralph's arm. So 2 gunshot wounds, the first to his head, which left him with, we're told, a fractured skull and a traumatic brain injury. The second one to his arm. We're told Ralph will likely have lifelong injuries to some degree, but that he is home and recovering, and his family is hopeful that it can be close to a full recovery as far as his cognitive ability is concerned, if not a full one. So obviously we're hoping for them as well, as in Clay.
Yeah, we're all hoping for that. Maggie Vespa, thank you.
Turning now to another case causing outrage, this one in Ohio. A special grand jury there has decided not to indict 8 Akron police officers in the shooting death of 25-year-old Jalen Walker. Walker was killed by police after being pulled over for an alleged traffic violation last June. Police say he fired a shot from the vehicle before running away, and that a gun was later found in the car. Yesterday, the Ohio Attorney General announced the grand jury concluded the officers were justified in using force. Following the decision, demonstrators took to the streets to protest the grand jury's decision. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch joins us now from Akron, Ohio with the latest. Jesse, good morning. First, walk us through the grand jury's decision here.
Yeah, good morning, Lindsay. And you can see right now it's quiet and peaceful in downtown Akron. It appears to have been largely peaceful, if not entirely peaceful, in terms of demonstrations overnight. We don't have any word on arrests from police at this point, but we're waiting for answers on that front. We don't know much, frankly, about the grand jury's decision. Those are secretive proceedings. We know that 7 of the 9 members of that panel would have needed to find sufficient evidence to issue an indictment. Officials say they cannot share what that vote was, but we do know that they did not meet that 7 of 9 threshold, obviously, on indictments for any of the 8 officers involved in that shooting of Jalen Walker. We are told, however, that the grand jury included 2 black jurors, 3 men, and 6 women. Other than that, we don't have many details about this special group's proceedings, but the Attorney General for the state of Ohio says that they reviewed evidence for more than a week, Lindsay.
And Jesse, we know this, of course, has been a trying time for the Walker family. We know they plan to file a lawsuit. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we know they plan to file a civil lawsuit. They say this will be a wrongful death lawsuit that they plan to file in the months ahead before the 1-year anniversary or by the 1-year anniversary of Jalen Walker's death, which was in late June of last year. Here's part of what an attorney for the family shared yesterday.
I wish you could have been in the home about 4:30 p.m. when I broke the news to the family. I wish you could have heard and felt and seen the screams. There was screaming.
That is an attorney for the family describing sharing the news that a grand jury declined to indict any of the officers. That attorney told me last night that he does not trust the investigative findings from authorities, Lindsay.
Jesse, got to be quick with you here. In terms of protests, what do we see?
Yeah, we're bracing for the potential for more demonstrations today. There are windows boarded up here, others that look like any Main Street USA right now. And again, what we've seen has been largely, if not entirely, peaceful so far, Lindsay.
All right, Jesse, thank you so much. This morning, we're learning more about that deadly mass shooting at a Sweet 16 party in Alabama over the weekend. 4 people were killed, dozens more injured when those shots rang out. Those victims, all identified now, ranging in age from 17 to 23. The youngest 3 victims are seniors at a local high school who were supposed to graduate in just weeks. Officials there confirm they're providing counseling to their classmates. The number of injured people also on the rise overnight, increasing from 28 to 32. Authorities say they are still on the hunt for a suspect.
And Russian President Vladimir Putin has visited 2 occupied regions of Ukraine, meeting with military commanders and trying to rally his troops as the war between both countries continues. NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber is in Ukraine and joins us now with more. Ellison, good morning. Good to see you. So what do we know about President Putin's trip? When did it happen? And where exactly did he go?
Hey, Clay. So every bit of information we have about this is primarily coming from the Kremlin and Russian state media. They say Russian President Vladimir Putin visited two areas that are currently controlled by Russian forces, that he traveled to the Luhansk region and then also to the Russian occupied portion of the Kherson region. And there they released video of it as well. They say that he toured headquarters there, military headquarters in Kherson, and also met with military leaders. One thing that we are hearing from the Kremlin, a spokesperson says that this video was taken on Monday, but one of the very few Russian independent news outlets, they say and have noted that in some of this video, you hear President Putin make a reference to some of the soldiers about the upcoming Orthodox Easter. That would have been Sunday. Again, the Kremlin is saying this video was taken on Monday. NBC News has not independently verified this video, but this visit is significant for a couple of reasons. One, it is the second time we have seen the Russian president travel to Russian-occupied territories in Ukraine in the last 2 months. The fact that he's also visiting the region of Kherson, the portion that is controlled by Russia, military analysts say that is significant because it is likely an effort on Russian side to try and boost morale amongst their troops there as Ukrainian forces prepare to launch a spring counteroffensive. Remember, this region is where Russia suffered one of its most embarrassing defeats. This is an area that they took control of fairly early in the full-scale invasion, but back in November, Ukrainian forces were able to take back all of the territory of the Kherson region that is on the right bank of the Dnipro River, as well as the city of Kherson, and forced Russian troops to retreat. So this has been, this is quite frankly a region that is an embarrassment for the Russian military, but something that Ukrainian military were very proud of. And the fact that we are seeing this visit on the heels of what, or in the front of what we expect to soon be a Ukrainian spring offensive is noteworthy. Clay.
This morning, a court in Moscow rejected an appeal by Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich to be released from pretrial detention. The U.S. citizen was arrested and charged with espionage last month, which he and the U.S. deny. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons joins us now for more on this. So, Keir, not entirely surprising, but give us what's the reason the court gave for its rejection of this appeal, and how did Gershkovich seem?
Yeah, not really surprising. A chilling split screen, though, right? Seeing President Putin there on Russian television at the same time as Evan Gershkovich is appearing in a Russian court. He looked relaxed. He looked determined, wearing a pair of jeans and a shirt. A fellow reporter calling out to him, "Stay strong, Evan," inside the courtroom. You're right. It isn't perhaps surprising that he lost his appeal against detention, given that he's facing espionage charges. Those charges, of course, that he vehemently denies, that the Wall Street Journal vehemently denies, that the U.S. government vehemently denies. But all the same, we now look forward to when the actual case will take place, and he will be in this notorious prison in Moscow until then.
What is the U.S. ambassador to Russia saying about this decision, Keir?
He was in there. He was in the courtroom. I came out from the court and spoke almost immediately. Take a listen.
I can only say how troubling it was to see Evan, an innocent journalist, held in these circumstances. The charges against Evan are baseless, and we call on the Russian Federation to immediately release him. We also call for the immediate release of Paul Whelan. Paul has been held more than 4 years in Russia. Both men deserve to go home to their families now.
Apologies, she was in there, I should have said, of course, and she was with Evan Gershkovich earlier this week. That was the first visit by the U.S. ambassador to Gershkovich in prison, something that the U.S. have been calling for some time. And she talked about wanting to have more access to him while he is being held, and describes him, though, as seeming confident.
What's next, Keir?
Well, he's going to be held now, according to the Russians, until late May. So perhaps that will be a time when we'll begin to see another court hearing and perhaps some of the actual charges discussed in court. But Russian lawyers tell us that these things can take a year to 18 months. And, you know, worryingly, of course, particularly for his family, it can be many, many years in prison if he is convicted.
Keir Simmons, thank you.
You bet.
Turning now to the latest on Capitol Hill, where Republicans and Democrats are butting heads over committee assignments, including the future of Senator Dianne Feinstein's spot on the Judiciary Committee. Here to break it all down for us is NBC News senior congressional correspondent Garrett Haake, who joins us now from Capitol Hill. Garrett, good morning. So, longtime California Senator Dianne Feinstein had asked to be temporarily replaced on the Judiciary Committee as she battled some health issues. But of course, that plan is now facing some pushback. What exactly is going on? What's the latest there?
Significant pushbacks. And Clay, I think the best way to think about this is most of where the action is going to be in the U.S. Senate for the next couple of months is going to be on the Judiciary Committee. They're trying to move judges to get lifetime appointments. It's really one of the few areas where Joe Biden can push his agenda through a divided Congress. Republicans have looked at the kind of lay of the land here and decided they don't want to make it any easier for Democrats to do that. And replacing Feinstein in a temporary manner on the Judiciary Committee would do just that. We heard from a lot of Republicans yesterday saying we're not going to do anything to make that process easier. And we heard some interesting pushback from some female Republican senators who are close with Feinstein, including Susan Collins, who said, look, she saw this as basically a sexist push to lean on Feinstein to get her to retire. She said she wouldn't support the effort out of a desire to essentially stick up for her friend. So I don't expect to see any action on that anytime in the near future.
I also want to turn to COVID because there's another hearing today on the origins of COVID-19. What should we be expecting from that hearing?
Yeah, look, this is a hearing on this select subcommittee focused entirely on this issue. The witnesses are both political witnesses. One of them is the former director of national intelligence, John Ratcliffe, who will say in his statement that he is convinced, based on all the intelligence that he has seen, that it was a leak out of a Chinese laboratory that started the COVID-19 pandemic. But I point out that these are political witnesses because we have seen a lot of debate, recent intelligence community assessments from various branches about where this leak where this pandemic really started. These aren't scientific witnesses. These aren't intelligence community witnesses per se. I think we're probably likely to have more heat shed than light today in that particular hearing.
And Garrett, tomorrow the House Oversight Committee is expected to hold a hearing on the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. What are you learning about that? We just have a few moments here.
Yeah, look, this will be fertile ground for Republicans. They have long viewed the Afghanistan withdrawal as perhaps Joe Biden's biggest weakness. They're going to dig into everything about that. Oversight's having this hearing tomorrow. Multiple Republican-led committees in the House are focused on this issue. Expect to see a lot of attention on the Afghan withdrawal in the months ahead, Clay.
All right, we know you'll be on it. Garrett Haake, thanks so much. And severe storms are in the mix in the plains today. So let's get a check at your Morning News Now weather.
Meteorologist Angie Lastman is tracking it all for us. Good morning, Angie.
Morning, ladies. Yeah, we've got a couple of these showers and even thunderstorms that are going to fire up throughout the day today. And you can see some of that rain already working into portions of southern Texas, stretching from Houston to Brownsville. And that's where we're just starting to see some of that activity. Meanwhile, in parts of the Great Lakes, still picking up on some snow showers. And in the Pacific Northwest, more snow showers and some rain mixing in as well. We've got a couple of systems that we're watching. This one that is bringing the snow and the cooler air, that's on its way out. But we still, nonetheless, are going to see temperatures well below normal in much of the Midwest through the day today. 46 degrees for Detroit, 41 for Buffalo. Pittsburgh ends up at just 50 degrees, sitting 15 degrees below where we should be for this time of year. So cooler than normal. Doesn't last for long. We start to see some warmer air settling in as we get into tomorrow. It becomes a little more mild, especially for places like Cincinnati, St. Louis, that will flirt with those upper 70s to low 80s and will be above normal. Now, that doesn't last for long. We're kind of on a roller coaster ride here with these temperatures in the next couple of days, because by Thursday, Chicago hits 72 degrees. We have a 10-degree temperature drop just 24 hours after that for Friday afternoon. And we're into the 40s for Saturday plans that you might have in places like Chicago, 50s for St. Louis. So we're going to warm up a little bit and then we're going to cool down. So just bear with me here with how to dress for that. You're going to want to keep at least the jackets out for a little while longer. Now, switching gears and talking about those severe storms that we mentioned, we have our next system that's going to develop and get its act together and move out of the Rockies and into the plains. And that happens through the day today, changing things for the forecast into the afternoon, especially into the evening hours. It looks like we'll see some thunderstorms across much of the plains. Bismarck could see some rain, maybe some snow in places like Montana. But then we'll have the potential to see those severe thunderstorms into the overnight hours tonight and especially into tomorrow. That's where we'll start to see some of those stronger storms developing. Omaha, Kansas City, Wichita, Oklahoma City, all have the potential to see some isolated hail up to 2 inches. That does include places, again, Omaha, Wichita, and Oklahoma City. You could see some of that large hail as well as the damaging winds and some isolated tornadoes. The line of storms continues to move to the east, so that area will be quiet, but now we'll start to look for places like Chicago, St. Louis, Little Rock, and Houston to have the potential for some of these stronger storms. We'll also have the heavy rain with this. And that means that the flash flooding concern will be there, too. But again, another day where damaging hail is a possibility, wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour, and isolated tornadoes, too.
Oh, hopefully no flooding in that area.
Yeah, I mean, Angie, is this level of variation typical?
Temperature-wise, yeah. You know, it's kind of that transitional period of the year where we go from the cool to the warm, and we're trying to figure it out. So not surprising when these systems are working their way east. But when it comes to severe weather, we've already had quite a start to the season, and it's only getting started.
Yeah, just hoping the plants survive it.
Yeah,
also,
exactly.
Angie Lasman, thank you so much. And there's a new breakthrough for cancer treatment that could be on the horizon. New research from a clinical trial for melanoma treatment suggests mRNA vaccines may be the future.
NBC News reporter Kirsten Dahlgren takes a look at the trial results and what it means for cancer patients.
What may be a watershed moment for fighting cancer.
The data were pretty darn impressive.
In a stage 2 clinical trial, researchers like Dr. Jeffrey Weber found adding an mRNA cancer vaccine to standard treatment reduced the chances for melanoma recurrence or death by 44%. Research on the vaccine was started before an mRNA vaccine was used for COVID, and it works similarly. Doctors use a blueprint from a patient's individual tumor to encode a personalized vaccine.
So basically turning your own immune system against the cancer.
That is absolutely correct. Going to generate killer cells that are going to seek out and find the tumor and get rid of it.
In 2019, Gary Keblish got the devastating diagnosis, advanced melanoma, the deadliest form of skin cancer.
I feel that I probably would have been one of those statistics had I not been involved in the clinical trial.
More than 3 years later, Gary is still cancer-free.
Taking this vaccine has given me freedom.
The vaccine now goes to a much bigger stage 3 clinical trial over the next few years before it could be commercially available. But researchers are hopeful for melanoma and maybe someday other cancers.
And if we get to the point where you can literally prevent almost everyone from relapsing, that's a gigantic win.
Roxy! A win may be one big step closer. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News.
Just incredible research there, hopefully very promising. Yeah. All right, coming up, Americans in Sudan are on alert this morning as fighting intensifies in the country. One woman currently trapped there joins us next with what she's seeing and how she's staying safe right now.
And later this hour, more workers are suffering from burnout more now than during the height of the pandemic. We'll explain what's behind this new wave of exhaustion. You're watching Morning News Now.
We are back with the latest on the situation in Sudan, which is embroiled in a violent power struggle that has left at least 185 people dead.
Heavy fighting continues for a 4th straight day in the capital, Khartoum. This morning, Al Arabiya television captured this video live, showing the moment a massive explosion rocked the city. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken issued a warning to the rival generals at the heart of the conflict after a U.S. diplomatic convoy came under fire. Here's what he said about the incident on the sidelines of the G7 in Japan.
All of our people are safe and unharmed. But this action was reckless, it was irresponsible, and of course unsafe. In the calls that I had this morning with Generals Hamedi and Burhan, I made very clear that any attacks, threats, dangers posed to our diplomats were totally unacceptable.
Joining us now to talk more about the situation on the ground is Lakshmi Parthasarathi. She's an American traveler currently in Sudan. Lakshmi, thank you so much for joining us, especially at a time like this. First off, I hope you and yours are keeping safe right now. Can you just tell us a bit about yourself, what brought you to Sudan, and where you're specifically staying, how long you've been there?
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm a travel writer and photographer, and so I was traveling to Sudan as a tourist to visit the sites here, learn about the culture, and I've been here for a few weeks, and I came to Khartoum a few days ago, and woke up to what I initially thought was a thunderstorm, and it turned out to be all-out war happening right next to an Airbnb that I was staying at, about a few kilometers away from the airport, where that whole area was under siege. And there's just been chaos now for the last few days. Actually, right at this moment, my friend and I were here hitchhiked south to find water and power because the city center and the areas around there where there's fighting, there's no access to a lot of basic resources. And it's kind of constant gunshots and South bombs and shelling. And yeah, it's been a difficult few days, and my thoughts are kind of just with the people that I've seen now here in the city people who are fleeing their homes with their families. It's been a very tough situation for a lot of people.
So, Lakshmi, you said that you hitchhiked to find some resources. Are you still in areas where you're seeing and hearing fighting, and what are some of the locals telling you?
Yeah. So we went 10 kilometers south, and this area had been peaceful, as what the people had said. But actually last night, a few hours after we arrived, there was a bomb strike on actually this mosque that we are standing in front of at this moment. No one was killed, fortunately, but a lot of people fled this area as well. So the fighting just seems to be escalating and spreading farther and farther out into other parts of the city. So it doesn't really seem like it's clear where there's safety and where there's not. There was a car of army soldiers or militia forces, unclear, kind of going around pointing guns. So it's calm here at the moment, but it's also still very, very tense, unclear what's happening. And people are just not really sure what the next steps are. People that have like a place to go outside of the city, people are trying to get there, but it's also not a safe journey leaving. So right now, the advice has been to stay inside, but a lot of people don't have resources, so people have to move. It's been tough.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to talk a bit more about that advice to stay inside. I mean, I know the airport is closed right now, and you said it, that it's not clear where is safe and where is not. I know the U.S. State Department has issued an order to stay indoors and shelter with no current plans for evacuations. How are you feeling about that? What's your reaction? Do you feel safe? Are you trying to get out of Sudan?
I'm just kind of waiting and seeing what's going to happen in the coming days. It does not seem like things are de-escalating, and there's definitely areas in the city that do not feel safe at all. I think at the moment, trying to find shelter and stay in place is good advice. Difficult to follow completely, but I'm hopeful that that there'll be areas where we can stay safe, and that hopefully over the coming days or weeks or whatnot, we can see some improvement.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's no way to fly out. It's a very, very big country, so to travel to any border to another country is not an easy journey. So right now, the only thing we can do is just kind of stay here and wait and see what happens.
Yeah, a lot of waiting and seeing, and just know that we're keeping you in our thoughts and prayers. Hope you stay safe, stay well, and have the resources you need. Lakshmi, thank you so much.
Just an incredible story. All right, more world headlines now. Vows of unity are emerging from a G7 meeting of foreign ministers in Japan.
Tehran bureau chief and NBC News correspondent Ali Arouzi joins us now with other international headlines. Good morning, Ali.
Good morning, guys. That's right. Russia's threat to station nuclear weapons in Belarus and China's coercion of Taiwan have been at the top of the agenda of the three-day G7 summit in Tokyo. The group, which comprises of the United States, Japan, Germany, Britain, France, Italy, and Canada, showed a united front threatening Russia with severe consequences if they use chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons in Ukraine, while criticizing China's intimidation of Taiwan. A massive 2-ton haul of cocaine wrapped in plastic has been scooped up by the police in the sea off eastern Sicily. Authorities believe a cargo ship left it in the sea in order for another vessel to come pick it up. adding that they found around 1,600 packets of cocaine in 70 bundles with an estimated street value of $450 million. And finally, a previously unknown coral reef with a copious marine life has been discovered off Ecuador's Galapagos Islands. The completely pristine reef is roughly 1.2 miles long at a depth of just over 1,300 feet and sits on the summit of a submarine mountain. Over 50% of the coral on the reef is living, which is believed to be several thousand years old. Let's hope our discovery doesn't wipe it out.
Amen to that. Thank you so much, Ali. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And coming up on Morning News Now, a man with a plan. President Biden is set to announce new efforts to make child care more affordable. We'll have that just ahead.
Plus, the results are in and the burnout is real. The new study shedding light on stress in the workplace and what you can do to relax. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. President Biden is expected to deliver remarks later today about the administration's efforts to make child care more affordable.
And meanwhile, another showdown could be coming over the debt ceiling after new comments from House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. For more on this, we are joined by NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba. Monica, good morning. Let's go ahead and start with the president's remarks today. What can we expect?
Yeah, and this is something that candidate Joe Biden had really promised, trying to improve and make child care more affordable for millions of families across the country. And in his role as president, what he can do is sign executive action that really starts at sort of the federal government level, directing agencies to try to find places where they can use money that's already been allocated for this to basically make it a bit better. So, for instance, for veterans, for home-based care, trying to improve that, trying to raise the pay and benefits for teachers that are a part of the federal Head Start program. And then also looking at places where they feel like this could really be something that is used a little bit more strategically, again, with money that's already been allocated through the Health and Human Services, to try to help so many families who certainly throughout the pandemic and in the aftermath have needed to improve childcare and try to get it to be a little bit more affordable so that so many people can also then return to the workforce. So this is something that the president's going to be talking about today in the Rose Garden. And this is something also that he has laid out in his 2024 budget. But the White House is saying they don't want to wait for Congress to act to already try to make some of these smart decisions to improve this critical industry. Lindsay and Sinclair.
And Monica, I do want to turn to the latest on the debt ceiling limit fight in Washington. We know House Speaker Kevin McCarthy gave remarks at the New York Stock Exchange just yesterday. And while there, he laid out some of House Republicans' plans to address the limit. So what were some of the big takeaways and the president's reaction to it?
So this battle has really been brewing for months since we knew that the U.S. was heading toward what ultimately would be an unprecedented situation since the United States has never before defaulted on its ability basically to borrow. So this is all about raising the debt ceiling, something that the deadline loosely has been pointed to as June or so. And so that is why you saw the president and the White House unveil their budget in the last couple of months, and they're asking Republicans to now put forth their plan. And they're saying they will do that in the coming weeks, though Speaker McCarthy was not providing tons of specifics in this speech yesterday. But this just continues to be basically a really high stakes game of chicken. Here is how the speaker put this in his remarks yesterday.
If Washington wants to spend more, it'll have to come together to find savings elsewhere. Just like every single American household does. Our proposal will also restore work requirements that ensure able-bodied adults without dependents earn a paycheck and learn new skills. That will grow our economy and help the supply chain.
So Republicans are really pitching spending cuts here. The White House says this is not a place for negotiation. It's too critical. And so we saw Speaker McCarthy come to the White House after he took that new leadership position and speak with the president. But since then, there haven't really been any clear meetings about what happens next. So clearly talks need to take place. But again, this is a president who has said, I'm not going to get into some of the nitty gritty. This is too important for the country.
Okay. Monica, thank you so much.
Let's turn now to your weekly mental health check-in. We're taking a closer look at burnout in the workplace and why some say it's worse than it was at the height of the pandemic.
Plus, we're going to dig into the laws of attraction between people, that is. We're going to explain why shared interests might not play as big of a role in falling in love than we previously thought.
So let's dig into it with Dr. Soumya Dave to help break down some of these headlines. She's a psychiatrist and author of What a Happy Family. Thank you so much for being with us. So let's start with stress in the office. A new Aflac report shows that many employees feel burnout is actually worse now compared to the height of the COVID pandemic. That's kind of surprising. So what exactly is leading to more burnout, and what are employees looking toward to ease that stress?
So people have really been through so much, right? They're dealing with inflation, rising costs of living, layoffs, so many different stressors, and burnout occurs when stress is prolonged. Now, in terms of what to do about it, I like to divide it into two steps. The first step being awareness. So identify that this is what's going on. Have you been feeling depleted for a long time? And can you know that this is the cause of it, that you're feeling burned out? The second step is to take action. Now, that action can mean reframing how you're thinking about your work. Are there positive aspects of your work that you can focus on? Are there benefits to your long-term goals that you're getting out of your job? Are there opportunities to take time off or reevaluate your career to work more flexibly? And for some people, it might mean actually thinking about a career pivot or a transition of some sort altogether. And then, of course, prioritizing sleep, self-care, setting boundaries, saying no to things that aren't restoring you, and really just remembering that this is the result of long-term depletion. So whatever helps you feel restored should go to the top of your priority list.
Yeah, really interesting, that graphic we were just showing. I mean, flexible scheduling, that's what people want. Not necessarily permanently working from home, but, you know, work with me. All right, doctor, let's turn to matters of the heart. New research suggests shared interests, so liking the same music, sharing a political view, maybe a bit of an illusion. Why is that? And does this mean we maybe shouldn't be so quick to write someone off?
So this is so interesting, right? We like sharing things in common with people. We like having common interests. And essentialism is this idea that when we share certain traits with a person, we also share the same essence as a person, right? So we think that sharing one similarity means we naturally share so many more. There was really, really interesting research done about this with the lead author, Dr. Charles Chu. So many great findings. And one that really stood out was that when people found that they shared the same interest in an artist, so they were both fans of an artist's work, they also thought that that meant they shared the same worldview. So we can sometimes think that one part equals to a whole. That might or might not be necessarily true. So I think it's always a good reminder to think about, how are we making assumptions about people? Where are we filling in the blanks? And is there an opportunity to dig in deeper, because human beings are complex?
And Dr. Dave, we just have a few moments here, but I wanted to talk about new polling from YouGov and Vox. It found that younger generations are turning to voice messaging or voice memos as a preferred way to talk. Why is that going on? Why is that happening?
So I'm getting more of these too, okay? I don't know if everyone else feels this way. I definitely am getting more of these as well. And what I found is that people are really exhausted with technology, right? So the idea of picking up the phone and having a full conversation sounds overwhelming. Things can get lost in translation and text messages. It can be hard to convey the full scope of it. A voice note is a low-stakes, low-pressure way to communicate with someone, have them hear your voice, which helps us feel comforted and more connected, and also tell a story in some way, right? Because you can speak for minutes, and unless you've changed your default settings, the voice note will disappear in a couple of minutes. So knowing that it might disappear also takes the pressure off as well.
It's so funny because I got this and I tried to send one back and I couldn't figure it out. I don't know if that makes sense.
I can't do it.
It's a good way to make sure things don't get lost in translation. Dr. Soumya Dave, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Coming up, he's a big deal, and he just made a really big deal. We are talking about Eagles QB Jalen Hurts, just signed a record-breaking contract extension with the team.
We'll tell you about it and how it could change the NFL. That's next on Morning News Now. We've got the latest on a blockbuster deal in professional football. Philadelphia Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts made history a little more than 2 months ago when, for the first time ever, he was one of 2 black quarterbacks playing in the Super Bowl.
Well, now Hurts is making history on the field again, signing a record-setting contract extension that makes him the NFL's highest-paid player ever. For more on this, we're joined by Zach Berman. He reports on the Eagles for The Athletic. Zach, good morning. We're talking about a lot of money. So how did this deal come to be? How was he able to get it?
Well, he earned it, and that's the place to start. He's someone who, from the time he was drafted as a second-round pick in 2020 to now, has simply improved every season. He went from backup to a starter trying to keep his job to the franchise player. And so this contract here, where based on annual average salary, average annual salary rather, he's the highest paid player in the league. He got it because he plays quarterback as well as anyone in the league. He was number 2 in the MVP voting last year, brought the Eagles to the Super Bowl. So he earned this deal.
And you said it, right? He earned it. Hurts clearly had a great year this past season with the Eagles, and somehow he's only 24 years old. Very impressive. But also impressive is the fact that his deal was negotiated by Nicole Lynn, and it's believed to be the largest ever contract completed by a female agent. Pretty cool. So how significant is the deal closed by a black woman? What does it say about the state of the industry right now?
Yeah, it's a credit to Nicole, because this is a record-setting deal. This is a deal that sets the market for quarterbacks here, and that's what an agent's supposed to do is get the best deal for the client. And so it's a credit to Nicole that this was completed, because oftentimes these can become acrimonious. You've seen that elsewhere, where the two sides can't agree, and the fact that Jalen Hurts' side with Nicole leading it, and then the Eagles were able to find that middle ground here, reach a deal that worked for both sides, and the significance of it for Nicole Lynn should not be understated.
There's another high-profile name, Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson. He's reportedly looking for a similar deal, maybe even more guaranteed money. So does this kind of contract, does this deal sort of set the stage? How does this change the landscape?
Yeah, well, what this does, I think, is it sets the market. It shows this is the going rate for top quarterbacks, for MVP caliber quarterbacks, which Lamar Jackson is. Now, every situation's different, and you just spoke about the agency. In Lamar Jackson's case, he represents himself, right? So there are maybe different variables at play. Also, Lamar Jackson is later on in his career, he's a free agent with a franchise tag. So there are variables that are different than the Jalen Hurts situation. But what the Jalen Hurts deal does is it now sets the going rate for top quarterbacks. So this can be used as a new template for whether it's Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert.
All right, Zach Berman, thanks so much for breaking that down for us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Let's go to some financial headlines. David's Bridal Stores announcing the company is filing for bankruptcy. They just did that Monday.
Yeah, CNBC Silvana Henao joins us with this and other financial headlines. Good morning, Silvana.
Zinkley, Lindsay, good morning to you. That's right. So David's Bridal has filed for bankruptcy. This is the second time in the past 5 years. And the move comes just days after the retailer said it was laying off more than 9,000 workers. The company says stores will remain open and business will continue as usual while it looks for a buyer. Orders will still be fulfilled and customers can still take advantage of Diamond, which is the company's rewards program. Ernst & Young plans to cut about 3,000 jobs in the U.S. The decision comes about a week after the company halted efforts to split its auditing and consulting businesses. The Big Four accounting giant cites economic conditions, a strong employee retention rate, and overcapacity in parts of the firm as reasons for the job cuts, which represent about 5% of its U.S. workforce. Apple has opened its first retail store in India today. CEO Tim Cook was on hand to open the doors at the location in Mumbai. Apple has operated in India for more than 25 years, but primarily sells products through authorized retailers and a website it launched a few years ago. It only has about a 3% market share in the country, trailing well behind the likes of Samsung and China's Xiaomi. So there you have it.
Okay, Silvana, thanks so much.
You got it.
All right, everybody, coming up, a streaming snafu.
Yeah, Netflix is doing damage control after a highly anticipated live event did not happen as planned. We'll give you the lowdown next on Morning News Now.
We are back now with a gem that is one of a kind. No, we're not talking about zinc clay. We are talking about a ruby worth more than 55 carats, and it is poised to become the world's largest gem to appear at auction. It is called the Star of Fura in Portuguese. It was found less than a year ago in the southern African nation of Mozambique. The auction house estimates it'll rake in more than $30 million. That would make it the largest and most expensive ruby ever sold at an auction. The gem will make its way to New York to be auctioned in June after going on display in China, Singapore, Geneva, and Dubai.
Well, I'm glad it's coming to New York because, you know, folks, I'm on the market for a ring. So.
Yeah, that is the only way I will get near something that valuable is seeing it through a case. Yes, love it, Lindsay. Thank you. And finally, at this hour, we told you yesterday, love is not blind. It's delayed. Netflix continues receiving backlash from fans after the highly anticipated live reunion of the series Love is Blind would not load for many viewers on Sunday. So several attempts to get the show back on the air. Eventually, the streaming giant opted to tape the event. And they said, look, we're sorry. Look at this, the statement here on the screen. We are incredibly sorry that the Love is Blind live reunion did not turn out as we had planned. But this didn't stop fans from voicing their frustrations on social media.
Who's getting fired at Netflix tonight? Who?
What are you doing?
I'm literally watching Love is Blind through TikTok Live because of friggin' Netflix.
Bro!
To be up in the prices and to prevent password sharing, and you have us waiting for an hour and a half?
People clearly upset. Yeah, some good points there. So joining us now to dig into them is entertainment journalist and pop culture expert Brian Baltazar. Brian, good morning. Hey, Brian. So much TV drama, so much delay. So was the reunion ultimately worth the wait? Walk us through what people have been saying about it after it was posted.
Oh, boy. Well, it turns out that a lot of people say that it wasn't. So, you know, we are trained to see all the tea spilled on these specials. And it turns out whether it was a snafu from those technical problems throwing people off, or perhaps the host, some say, it just was not well received. So I think we have a few tweets that we have coming up here. One of them, well, there's the big screen that most people saw. Instead of Love is Blind, you were seeing this. It's kind of ironic that the show is about not seeing the one you love right away. That was the case with the special. But basically, people, as you can see, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez was saying, someone called Lucia the seamstress to fix this. This is one of the women on the show who, well, it's actually a woman in a hometown who fixed a guy's pants just before he was getting married. So it's a reference to a woman on the show. Karamo saying the error message was sending him Chris Hayes, our own. And that's what's interesting, too. You know, like members of the media and media companies were also responding. Bravo had something fun and snarky to say. So did Blockbuster. But it turns out that what happens then, you know, at the end of the day, you want to see some juice happen. And apparently it just wasn't happening. You know, Andy Cohen actually said, you know, there's a reason these things aren't live, because sometimes, say, these Housewives specials, they'll shoot them for hours to get the best hour edited down.
Yeah,
and
I'm still waiting for Vanderpump. I mean, they just shot that, and like, when am I going to get to see that?
Exactly. And I mean,
right,
Brian,
well, they're ensuring you that you get the best moments, right?
Yeah.
And that's what didn't happen here.
And you mentioned sort of the controversy surrounding Vanessa and Nick Lachey around their hosting style. Can you dig into that a little?
Yeah, well, some people were saying that they were a little bit, Vanessa in particular, was too favorable to the women, right? Nick didn't say enough, and that they didn't drill down deeply enough into some of these topics. And I think that's partly because of the time constraint they were under. They had to cram it all into what ended up being 90 minutes. But it's just really hard to get people's emotions heightened on the first question. And so people were saying even that Vanessa was pressing too hard about having babies and whether they had had sex yet. So people were really tough on this, but I think people were set off by what was a really terrible misstep in the very beginning, and it may have set the tone for the whole night.
So, Brian, where do you see this going here? I mean, is Netflix learning some things here? We just heard that person on TikTok say, look, you're raising prices. You're locking me out from letting my nephew and my cousin use this. And also, is the industry watching this, too, and thinking, all right, let's not do that?
Yes, they are watching. In fact, Netflix's earnings report is released today. And of course, you want to talk about what the future is for Netflix at the same time. You know, it's a good thing this didn't happen with the Chris Rock special. I think the backlash would have been even far greater. But, you know, it's not like live is an unprecedented thing. We're live right now. So it shouldn't really be that hard for Netflix to figure out. But I think all eyes are going to be on them about what they schedule next. And the stakes are going to be really high for them to get that right. Most streamers love to say that the demand broke the internet. But Netflix hasn't really said that. They haven't said it was too many people. And so I'm really curious to see what has happened. I think they're being really quiet about it. They have a lot to figure out before they do this again.
All eyes on this one. Love is blind, but not patient.
I think Brian was saying if we could figure it out, they should be. I don't know. Is that
I mean,
it's not as easy as
live is
people
done
think.
all the time, every day. They should be able to figure it out, right?
Let them know, Brian. Brian
I was praying my Zoom wouldn't freeze during that moment, by the way.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Brian. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now. Good morning. I'm Zinklea Samwa.
And I'm Lindsay Reiser. Joe and Savannah are on assignment. Right now on Morning News Now, under arrest. After days of protests, a white homeowner is now facing charges after police say he shot a black teen twice when he mistakenly rang the wrong doorbell. White prosecutors say they're not pushing for hate crime charges, despite saying there was a racial component in the case. Appeal denied. New developments this morning in the arrest of an American journalist in Russia. Evan Gershkovich appeared publicly in a Russian court today for the first time since his detention. We have the latest from the courtroom and new reaction from Washington. Courtroom showdown after a one-day delay. A landmark billion-dollar defamation case gets underway this morning, pitting Fox News against Dominion voting systems. At issue, false claims made about the 2020 presidential election on some of the network's most prominent programs, the big names who could take the stand, and the far-reaching impact the case could have. And flipping the script, Broadway's Bad Cinderella is putting a new twist on the classic story. We talked to the stars of the show about making history and showcasing diversity on the biggest stage. And love that Joe Fryer gets these interviews. He's the best at them.
We love him.
Yeah, that'll be coming up next. But we are going to begin this morning in Kansas City, Missouri. The homeowner who police say shot 16-year-old Ralph Yarl after he accidentally rang the wrong doorbell is now facing 2 felony counts.
Yeah, Yarl has been discharged from the hospital, but his lawyers say he suffered a traumatic brain injury. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa is on the ground there in Kansas City with the latest.
Hey, good morning here from Kansas City. Per court documents, Andrew Lester telling police he had never seen Ralph Yarl before, and the two didn't exchange any words. Police also noting Lester was upset and repeatedly expressed concern for the 16-year-old boy after the shooting, a shooting which prosecutors say has, quote, a racial component.
This morning, mounting calls for justice after a Missouri teen was shot when, according to his family, he simply rang the wrong doorbell. 84-year-old Andrew Lester, the Kansas City homeowner who is white, is facing first-degree assault and armed criminal action charges for allegedly shooting 16-year-old Ralph Yarl, who is black. The high school junior went to pick up his younger twin brothers Thursday night, but his family says he accidentally went to the wrong home and rang the bell. According to the probable cause warrant for his arrest, Lester thought Ralph Yarl was attempting to break in and was, quote, scared to death.
There was a racial component to the case.
Clay County prosecutor Zachary Thompson says Yarl never crossed into Lester's home and alleges he was shot through a glass door with a .32 revolver. Yarl told police Lester also said, "Don't come around here." Civil rights attorney Lee Merritt says Yarl was shot twice, including once in the head. After he was shot, running for help, knocking on multiple doors.
And then the third neighbor gave him instructions to put his hands in the air and lie on the ground.
The shooting garnered the attention of the nation, making headlines in Hollywood, too. Halle Berry and Viola Davis posting on social media demanding charges. Merritt also says President Biden called Yarl, inviting him to the White House. Relatives say Yarl is a marching band standout with dreams of attending Texas A&M for chemical engineering, and that his community is strong, his family thankful he's alive.
He's alive. I think that's the biggest message that I want people to remember, is that he is alive.
The family saying 16-year-old Ralph Yarl is home coping with injuries that the family attorney says are very serious and he could have for the rest of his life. The family maintaining that Yarl was shot twice, once in the head and once in the arm. That first shot, they say, left him with a cracked skull and a traumatic brain injury. And after having brain surgery in the hospital, he has been discharged. He is home, and his aunt telling us he's healing one day at a time. Back to you.
Maggie, thanks so much.
In Ohio this morning, 8 police officers in Akron will not face criminal charges in connection with the death of 25-year-old Jalen Walker. Yesterday, a grand jury returned what's called a no-bill decision after spending about a week deliberating potential charges. Walker's death sparked outrage across the country last summer after police body camera footage showed officers chasing him before shooting him nearly 50 times. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch joins us now from Akron, Ohio with the latest. Jesse, good morning.
Lindsay, good morning. Here in downtown Akron, some business storefront windows remain boarded up. Others look like any other Main Street USA right now. We haven't gotten any official word from police about potential arrests from overnight, but the protests and demonstrations we've seen appear to be largely, if not entirely, peaceful in an unsettled community.
Overnight, outrage in Akron, Ohio. Dozens protesting after Ohio's Attorney General announced Monday there will be no state criminal charges against any of the 8 officers who opened fire on Jalen Walker, the 25-year-old black man killed by police last June.
The grand jury concluded that the officers were legally justified in their use of force.
7 of the special grand jury's 9 members would have needed to find sufficient evidence for an indictment. Officials say the panel included 2 black jurors, 3 men, and 6 women.
Do you think this was more heartbreak, a feeling of injustice, outrage?
It's betrayal. It's the constant refrain is, when will this change?
An attorney for Walker's family says he does not trust the findings from a month-long investigation. Police attempt a traffic stop. They say Walker flees in his vehicle before firing a gun at least once. Walker then flees on foot in a ski mask. Police tried to tase Walker.
Mr. Walker then reached for his waistband in what several officers described as a cross-draw motion, planted his foot, and turned toward the officers while raising his hand. Only then did the officers fire.
The scene illustrated in this new video shared by authorities. According to prosecutors, police fired 94 shots in less than 7 seconds, roughly 46 bullets striking Walker, who died.
Although the officers did not know it at the time, Mr. Walker had left his recently purchased gun in his car.
Officials say police believed Walker was a threat.
If he was a lethal threat leaving his car, he should have been shot immediately when he left his car. But he wasn't.
Police say that the officers who shot at Walker remain on administrative duty. Officials will not publicly name those officers, saying they believe those officers continue to face threats. We've reached out to police asking if those officers who shot at Walker faced any prior use of force complaints, but we have not heard back. Lindsay?
Jesse, thank you.
And now to Russia, where this morning a Moscow court rejected the appeal against the detention of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich. Gershkovich was arrested last month on espionage charges. He's denied any involvement in espionage. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons joins us now with the very latest. Good morning, Keir.
Hey, Zinkley, good morning to you. Evan Gershkovich looked relaxed and determined in court, despite learning just in the last hour that he has lost that appeal against his detention. He is the first U.S. journalist to be arrested over spying charges since the Cold War, charges which he denies. The Wall Street Journal saying he was simply doing his job as a journalist.
This morning, Evan Gershkovich in a Russian court. The first images of him for weeks, standing in a glass box, surrounded by masked security guards as the cameras were brought in. Wearing a shirt and jeans, arms folded, at one point talking to his legal team, appealing against charges of spying with vehement denials by the US and his employer. Gershkovich was an accredited journalist. I love you very, very much, he told his family in a letter published by the Wall Street Journal, his first direct contact with them. Until we meet soon, he wrote. Evan Gershkovich was detained during a reporting trip to Yekaterinburg. He's now held in a notorious Moscow prison. The newspaper releasing an interview with his parents and sister.
It was just like crushing, totally crushing.
Along with a video of the reporter as a child. Happy birthday to you. Growing up, playing sports and the cello.
I'm just in awe of him.
His family says he loved Russia and being a reporter. I'm not losing hope, he wrote to them in his 2-page note home.
I know that he felt like it was his duty to report. He loved Russian people, you know.
He still does.
He still does, yes.
He was really passionate about showing other sides to Russia, the nuance and the beauty of it.
But as the court hearing got underway this morning, Russian television focused on footage of President Putin visiting Russian-occupied Ukraine, speaking to Russian troops in the Kherson region. It's not clear when that trip took place.
And the U.S. ambassador who was in court this morning was able to see Evan Gershkovich this week for the first time, saying that he is in good health and remains strong. But Gershkovich could face up to 20 years in prison if he is convicted. And Russian experts tell us that a case like this for espionage could take a year or 18 months to play out.
Keir, thanks so much.
You bet.
Now let's bring in Kristen Gibbons-Fedden to talk more about this story. She's a civil rights attorney and former prosecutor. Kristen, good morning. So, as expected, the court in Moscow has rejected Gershkovich's appeal against his pre-trial detention. What's your reaction to this decision, and what does it mean for journalists, and this journalist specifically in his case going forward?
You know, it's not a surprising result given Russia's track record. I think this case is specifically related, excuse me, to espionage. You know, when you look at the Griner case, which was not an espionage charge, but then you look at Whelan case, which was an espionage charge, you can see the complexities and the difficulties that really deal with the nature of these types of cases, particularly to Russia, who is the prosecuting agency and who is the governing agency. It really, in this particular case, as well as for journalists, highlights the need for a more robust and coordinated approach from the U.S. government to really secure the release of American citizens, particularly journalists, whose job it is to really engage with the freedom of the press, who are wrongfully detained abroad.
And Kristen, I want to dig into the nature of the charges a bit, because Evan is the first American journalist to be detained in Russia on espionage charges, specifically since the Cold War. So how much more complex is the legal process compared to someone like Brittany Griner, who was convicted on drug charges in Russia and then later released in a prisoner exchange?
This particular case, the espionage case, is going to be more similar to Paul Whelan's case, not like Brittany Griner's. And these espionage cases, like I mentioned, are generally more complex and difficult to resolve. And the complexity really arises from the nature of the charges and the high level of sensitivity surrounding espionage allegations. You know, while the U.S. government has deemed them and designated both Whelan and Gershkovich wrongfully detained, indicating that they deny the legitimacy of these espionage charges, the Russian government has really taken these charges very serious, which really complicates negotiations and makes their release a more challenging and sensitive diplomatic process. On the other hand, Brittany Griner, which involved a non-espionage related case, and her release came really after a prisoner swap. But while her case really still required diplomatic efforts, the nature of the charges were less sensitive. And really, she wasn't released until after almost a year in prison, and again, after trial. So with regard to Gershkovich, I don't imagine that there's going to be any release until there is some type of trial. And given, again, Russia's track record, it will most likely result in a conviction.
All right, really important legal analysis there. Kristen Gibbons-Fedden, thank you so much.
The landmark trial involving Dominion Voting Systems and Fox News is set to get underway this morning in Delaware after that one-day delay. The trial will determine whether Fox News can be held liable for false claims that Dominion's voting machines were used to rig the 2020 presidential election. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk joins us now from Wilmington, Delaware. Stephanie, good morning.
Hey, Lindsay, good morning. You know, that delay was unexpected, and the judge didn't give a reason. There were reports that there were last-minute settlement negotiations underway, but neither side would comment. NBC News could not confirm those reports. The trial, the judge says, starts today.
With the start of the landmark trial finally here, some of Fox News' biggest stars could be taking the stand in the coming weeks, along with company heads, including 92-year-old Fox Corporation chairman Rupert Murdoch. At the center of the case, 20 statements following the 2020 presidential election. President Trump's lawyers were repeated guests on Fox News, claiming Dominion voting machines rigged the election.
The machine ran an algorithm that shaved votes from Trump and awarded them to Biden.
At the center of it all, Dominion voting systems. Are they the culprit here? Not the only culprit, but are they the principal culprit?
All of the allegations false, Judge Eric Davis says, writing in a recent decision the evidence was crystal clear. None of the statements relating to Dominion about the 2020 election are true. But Dominion will have to prove actual malice, that Fox published lies knowingly or with reckless disregard for the truth. A necessary standard for a democracy, say legal experts.
Otherwise, we're going to create a chilling effect where it's actually hard for people to get information.
According to court documents, Fox News argues it gave context and informed their audience at every turn that the allegations were just allegations. In a statement, Fox News saying Dominion's lawsuit is a political crusade in search of a financial windfall, but the real cost would be cherished First Amendment rights. Less than 2 weeks after the election, Fox was facing a backlash. Audience numbers down by more than 30%, according to court documents. November 12th, the Fox White House correspondent challenged Mr. Trump's claims about the election. Tucker Carlson texted Sean Hannity, "Please get her fired. It's measurably hurting the company. The stock price is down." The text, part of a mountain of evidence that has been released publicly. Fox argues much of it cherry-picked to hurt the network's reputation. A rare behind-the-scenes look after one of the country's most contentious elections.
One of the key questions will be who had editorial control, and then linking those people to the specific broadcasts in question, and then proving that they acted with actual malice. Lindsay, back to you.
All right, Stephanie, thank you so much.
Let's take a turn now and get a check on your morning news now weather.
NBC News meteorologist Angie Lastman is here with the latest forecast. Good morning, Angie.
Good morning, guys. We are kicking things off with a potential for some fires to quickly start and quickly spread here through the day. We've got 23 million people in the Southwest and in parts of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic included in these fire alerts that are up for now. We've got gusty winds up to 45 miles per hour and that low humidity, so just be careful about that. Meanwhile, cooler than normal temperatures have settled in for parts of the Northeast and the Great Lakes areas. 46 degrees in Detroit, Cincinnati sitting at 65 degrees, 58 for New York. Not bad for this time of year, but definitely not what it was just a couple of days ago. The warmth will start to work its way back into the picture, though, here as we get into tomorrow. You can see these temperatures are already improved for much of the Tennessee Valley and extending out towards the east. Atlanta ends up at 84 degrees tomorrow, Cincinnati at 79, and St. Louis is back to the 80s. That warmth is short-lived. We'll deal with it for a little while before we start to see those temperatures taking a tumble once again. Chicago's into the low 70s on Thursday, 60s by Friday, and back to the 40s by Saturday. So the moral of the story is don't put away the layers. You'll likely need that jacket again, whether you're in Cincinnati, where you'll end up into the 80s by Thursday and 60s by Saturday. We'll see these temperatures continue to cool down as some colder air settles in thanks to a front that's going to be working through. Now, that same front is going to change some things as far as severe weather potential and rain chances over the next couple of days for a lot of folks. Here's the setup right now on your satellite and radar. One thing to note, we have an exiting system that's still leaving some lingering snow showers along the Great Lakes. It's all of that cold air moving across those lakes and leaving anyone that's downwind of the lakes with some additional snowfall. So that's mainly folks like Buffalo into portions of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And this is going to be something we'll see for a little while longer today before we get that out of the picture. Meanwhile, along the Pacific Northwest, we do have some more snow showers working that way. We're going to eventually start to see a system take shape and work out of the Rockies into the plains and bring a couple of chances for us to see some of these stronger and even severe storms over the next few days. So a couple days where you're going to want to stay connected weather-wise. We do have a marginal risk through the day today, into the afternoon mainly and into the evening hours. We could see some of these stronger, severe storms develop. Notice there's also going to be some folks that will deal with some snow in places like Montana and the Dakotas. We'll see those storm chances last into the evening hours tonight, and then tomorrow will really ramp them up. So strong winds, isolated hail, isolated tornadoes, all can be a possibility, and that does include places like Omaha, Wichita, and Oklahoma City. The larger hail, same kind of area, so we're going to watch for the potential of up to 2-inch hail as we get into the afternoon hours tomorrow. Looking ahead to Thursday, the potential doesn't go away, and we're going to add on some flash flooding concerns. We'll have all of those same kind of threats that will be possible into the afternoon hours. They just shift a little farther to the east from Chicago to Texas. We'll see that potential. And how about the rain? Yeah, the flash flooding concern will be there as well. You can see some of those higher amounts in places like Green Bay, Minneapolis, Des Moines, and Kansas City, as well as Little Rock, Shreveport. A lot of areas that already have had a lot of rain so far this season. They don't necessarily need it, and maybe they have some swollen waterways or saturated ground, and we could potentially see some flash flooding concerns in that same area in the coming days.
Important to be alert to any alerts in your community.
Exactly.
Angie Lastman, thank you so much.
All right, coming up, Ron DeSantis ramping up his ongoing fight with Disney.
Yeah, we'll tell you about the new threats from the Florida governor as he once again takes aim at the theme park giant.
Welcome back. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis ramping up his ongoing fight against Disney.
It's his latest threat against Disney to possibly build a state prison right next to the happiest place on earth. NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us now. Good morning, Gabe.
Lindsay and Zinkley, good morning. So Governor Ron DeSantis is heading here to D.C. today for a rare trip with GOP lawmakers amid widespread speculation that he'll soon announce a run for president. But now, as the Florida legislature is still underway, he's doubling down on his fight against an American icon, Mickey Mouse. This morning, the ongoing feud between Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Disney is intensifying.
They're going to live under the same laws as everybody else.
DeSantis says a new bill's in the works from Florida's Republican-controlled legislature to wrestle back power from Disney, the state's largest single-site employer. He wants to revoke the company's self-inspection of rides and monorails and investigate potential safety hazards. The move comes after Disney quietly managed to prevent the state board from taking control of a 42-square-mile special tax district, which essentially allows the entertainment company self-rule in Florida.
This is basically a sham agreement.
The clash started last year when Disney opposed Florida's parental rights and education law, which opponents called the Don't Say Gay bill. It bans classroom discussion about sexual orientation and gender identity in kindergarten through third grade. DeSantis also now floating the idea of the state developing land next to Disney World.
Maybe try to do more amusement parks. Someone even said, maybe you need another state prison. Who knows?
The renewed political brawl comes as DeSantis ramps up his travel nationwide ahead of a possible presidential run, speaking to supporters last week in Ohio, Virginia, and New Hampshire.
We have made Florida the state where woke goes to die.
But his poll numbers are dropping after sustained attacks from Donald Trump.
Ron DeSanctimonious is being crushed in the polls, all of them.
And while DeSantis has largely avoided engaging Trump directly, NBC News has exclusively reported that DeSantis' political team has reached out to members of Florida's congressional delegation to keep them from endorsing the former president. And this week, a super PAC supporting DeSantis is out with a 7-figure ad buy, even though he's not yet formally in the race. Disney said it had no comment on Governor DeSantis' latest remarks, but in its first tweet following the news conference, it highlighted an upcoming Pride event at Disneyland. And earlier this month, CEO Bob Iger said it seemed wrong to him that the governor would seek to punish a company for exercising free speech. Lindsay and Zinkley.
All right, Gabe, thank you.
And the road to the White House is getting a little more crowded.
Next week, former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson is expected to formally announce that he is running for the Republican nomination for president.
NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard spent some time with Hutchinson and traveled across Iowa and now brings us an exclusive first on Morning News Now. Good morning, Vaughn.
Good morning, guys. Asa Hutchinson is different than the other Republican candidates who have announced at this point. Why? Because he's taking Donald Trump on directly, and he said that is the way to win this Republican nomination. This man,
hello, Governor. Hey, how are we doing?
Good to meet you. Is a Republican.
I might be spending as much time up here as I do in Arkansas.
Taking on Donald Trump.
I'm running for president because we need a course correction in our country. I'll just tell you very frankly, we need a course correction in the Republican Party as well.
This is Asa Hutchinson, a former congressman, a former Bush administration official, and most recently, the two-term governor of Arkansas. How are you going to do this?
Well, it's going to take a lot of shoe leather. We're going to have to be going to small venues. We're going to be visiting with people about the issues.
We spent the day in Iowa with Hutchinson, his first trip to the caucus state since formally filing his paperwork to win the Republican nomination for president. He intends to make this campaign very different than Mr. Trump's.
How we doing? Good, how are you? Good, good.
One focused on traveling town to town.
I'd like to have one of those mushrooms there.
Those are my favorite.
And then that New York strip. This guy looks like a Brussels sprouts guy to me.
You're the one candidate so far who is really taking Donald Trump on directly, not really going around the edges of this. Why?
Because he's a defining person in this campaign. And if you don't say, I'm different from Donald Trump, that I'm going to provide a different leadership than he does, then why are you in the race?
Why does the party need to move on from Donald Trump?
Because Donald Trump has taken us back to bitterness. He's taken us back to, what's a personal vendetta. Whenever you look at what he wants to do as president, it's more about getting even with his political enemies than leading our country, and that concerns me. Oh, listen, we are cooking that. Yeah, I like what I see.
What evidence or data have you seen that would suggest that you can win this nomination?
Well, history. Whenever you look at the history of front runners, it's not too good.
This front runner, though, still here in Iowa this month has 80% favorability among Iowa Republicans. How do you make that not reality?
Well, you get in there and you make your case. And sure, I will concede that this is a challenge. All right.
Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump have really played to these ideas of cultural fights. And in the Republican Party, we've seen it galvanize a primary electorate. But to what extent do you fear that it alienates a part of the general electorate that you would need to win the presidency?
Well, I think you have to be careful about using the same tools the left use. Do we want the conservative government to tell businesses what you can and can't do, or what you can't speak out on and not speak out on?
You also vetoed a ban on gender-affirming care for minors in Arkansas. What went into your thought process when you did that?
I think whether you're talking about the government telling parents about vaccines, or parents telling how you raise your children on some very sensitive issues like gender identity, I think you have to be careful about getting the government right in the middle of that.
Wow, really important reporting, Vaughn. So now he's in the race, but has he previously supported former President Donald Trump?
Yes, he has. He was the Arkansas chair of Donald Trump's presidential campaign. He spoke at the 2016 Republican National Convention, saying that Donald Trump was the leader of our times. Wow. But over the course, especially after the January 6th attack, that's when Asa Hutchinson said that the Republican Party needed to move in a different direction. And look, Asa Hutchinson, he's just wrapped up his 2 terms as governor. He is a longtime social conservative. Nobody would question his Republican credentials up until this point. And that's why he said he felt that this was his moment to get into this race and to present his case to the Republican electorate that they should return to its roots.
I think he knows he's got an uphill climb to go with current polling. Trump still leading the party, essentially. I have a really important question for you. Do you like Brussels sprouts?
I love Brussels sprouts.
Okay,
He called me out in real time. I don't know. I would give him that indication, but
I'd love to see it. Vaughn Hillier, great reporting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
All right, time now for international headlines, starting with a surprise visit to occupied Ukraine by Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Tehran bureau chief and NBC News correspondent Ali Arouzi joins us now with more. Good morning, Ali.
Good morning, guys. That's right. As Russia's war in Ukraine grinds into its 14th month of conflict, Vladimir Putin has embarked on a morale-building exercise, visiting Kremlin forces in command posts fighting in Ukraine. A video released by the Kremlin and broadcast by Russian state television showed Putin arriving by helicopter in the southern Kherson region. It was his second trip in 2 months to the Russian-occupied territories. As fighting continues between Sudan's army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, otherwise known as the RSF, a U.S. diplomatic convoy came under fire in an apparent attack by fighters linked to the RSF, drawing a sharp rebuke from the Secretary of State, Blinken, who called the incident reckless and irresponsible, adding that the convoy was flying U.S. flags and that they were all safe. Fighting that erupted on Saturday between Sudan's army and paramilitary RSF has killed 185 people so far and injured 1,800 others, according to the UN. And finally, the second member of the popular K-pop boy band BTS has begun his mandatory military service in South Korea. The Grammy-nominated band member J-Hope kept a low profile as a van carrying him delivered him to his enlistment ceremony. On Monday, the singer posted a picture on social media of himself with a shaved head, saying he will be back soon. More than 10,000 fans left comments wishing him well. And those are your international headlines, guys.
Ali Arouzi, thank you so much.
And coming up, a new treatment for melanoma brings promising results.
Up next, we're taking a closer look at this medical breakthrough and what it could mean for potentially other deadly diseases. Welcome back, everybody. There is a new experimental skin cancer vaccine, which appears to be effective in keeping the cancer from coming back, according to new data from a trial.
A study presented at the American Association for Cancer Research's annual meeting showed that patients who received the vaccine to treat melanoma combined with immunotherapy reduced the risk of recurrence by nearly half.
For more on this, we are joined by NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel. So, Dr. Patel, good to see you. Good morning. This is an mRNA vaccine. It's made by Moderna and Merck. So how does it work, and what are some of the key takeaways here?
Yeah, this is incredible news. So the key takeaways in this situation is that we have melanoma and recurrent melanoma, which is a form of skin cancer that can be incredibly hard to get rid of. And what they did in the phase 2 trial, which means that they're still in the early stages, but they took a trial, took about half of the participants, of 150 people with melanoma, half of them, and gave them the standard immunotherapy, which is kind of a standard chemotherapy cocktail, if you will. But then in the other half did this tailored vaccine. They removed the initial cancer from these patients, and then in a lab basically took the patient's cancer cells and programmed a vaccine, just like our COVID vaccines, to then put back into the patient in the form of a vaccine and teach the patient's own natural immune system to kill any remaining cancer cells. And here's where it got even more surprising, to kill any recurrent cancer cells. And that's what they saw in the trial. They saw that this vaccine could prevent recurrence, which is remarkable.
Dr. Patel, I mean, this is truly remarkable. So what are the next steps here with this vaccine? Does it now go to a longer trial to test its effectiveness?
Right. Yeah, in the kind of clinical trial world, a phase 2 trial that's this successful gets tracked into what we call a phase 3 trial, which means more people, more clinical trial participants, just a bigger group to see if more than 157 people had this similar response. Given the strength of those initial results, I fully expect that phase 3 trial will have results in the next 2 to 3 years. And then we could see this vaccine and this immunotherapy, the combination of these therapies, vaccine plus that standard therapy, the combination of those could be available to all patients with melanoma in a matter of 3 to 4 years.
Doctor, got to be quick with you on this, but what could this mean for potentially other diseases?
This is remarkable, not just for other cancers, but think about it, taking any other disease and taking your own immune system and teaching your natural immune system to block that disease and any recurrence. It's just dramatic. It's a watershed moment in medicine.
Wow. Dr. Patel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And there's growing concern this morning across the U.S. following several toxic spills and chemical fires this year. As NBC's Tom Costello explains, the incidents are raising worries about the long-term health impact on families who live nearby.
From that massive fire in Georgia to a chemical spill near Philadelphia, the train derailment in East Palestine and the plastics fire in Richmond, Indiana, fear of the unknown is most terrifying. The EPA finding hydrogen cyanide, benzene, chlorine, and carbon monoxide.
It's hard for me to breathe. My lungs are hurting. I have extremely bad headache.
Lynn Childers already had emphysema. He lives 5.5 miles from the Richmond fire and was outside gardening with his great-grandchild.
And this black looked like soot or something falling from the sky.
Charisse Munyon lives in East Palestine.
I'm concerned with myself, but I want to make sure that my kids are going to be okay.
A coalition of groups working to track and prevent chemical disasters estimates there's a chemical fire, explosion, or toxic release every other day in this country.
That is just simply too much. You can't smell cancer on your skin, right? So these chemicals can do harm either immediately or over a long period of time.
The coalition wants stronger EPA regulations on hazmat storage, switching to safer alternatives, and informing communities and firefighters of the toxins in their backyards. Lung experts warn even minimal exposure to some toxins can do lasting damage.
The effects can last for some time. And how long? Could be weeks, could be months, could be years.
Lynn Childers is most concerned for his 4-year-old great-grandchild.
My time probably is short in this life. But my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, what's the long-term health effects of this going to be on her?
The chemical concerns come as non-smoking lung cancer rates are rising in the U.S. Researchers blame exposure to air pollution and toxins. Back to you.
Tom, thanks so much.
Coming up, TikTok ban. Montana is now the first state to make it illegal to download the popular app.
We're breaking down the decision and the impact it could have as the fight plays out on the national stage. Welcome back. Time may be running out for TikTok as the White House continues to negotiate with the company about its future in the U.S. One state is trying to take action on its own. Montana, now the first state to pass a bill making it illegal to download the app. It alleges that TikTok gathers users' data against their will to share with the Chinese government. NBC News correspondent Gotti Schwartz has the story.
Hey, good morning, Zinkley. Yeah, Montana's bill would make it illegal to download TikTok in the state, but not illegal to use if you already have it on your phone. And experts say if the Republican governor there signs it into law, it will certainly end up in court.
Montana TikTokers saying they are not happy about the prospect of their favorite app being banned in Big Sky country.
It's absolutely dumb and ludicrous for the state of Montana to be banning TikTok.
If it's such a huge threat to our national security, we need to know exactly what that threat is. Nobody's telling us.
But the bill's sponsor says the threat from China is clear, and she hopes to send a message to Washington.
After years of investigative reporting, we now know this to be true. TikTok endangers the safety of Montanans and Americans at large.
Around half the states and the federal government already banned TikTok on government devices. This bill, backed by Montana's GOP-controlled legislature, would go even further, prohibiting downloads of TikTok in the state and penalizing mobile app stores or TikTok up to $10,000 a day. It does not apply to individual TikTok users and wouldn't take effect until January 2024. Some small business owners who depend on the app for marketing say they don't like the idea.
I would say that this is trying to ban TikTok is sort of censorship in its, finest form.
A spokesperson for TikTok called the bill, quote, egregious government overreach and said the issue will be decided in court, adding the bill's champions have admitted they have no feasible plan for operationalizing this attempt to censor American voices. Without citing specific examples, the bill claims TikTok gathers significant information and accesses users' data against their will to share with the People's Republic of China. Testifying before Congress last month, TikTok CEO said parent company ByteDance is not controlled by the Chinese government.
Has ByteDance spied on American citizens? I don't think that spying is the right way to describe it.
The White House has given the company an ultimatum: sell the app or face a ban in the U.S.
Senate Bill 419 has passed the House.
Until then, legislators in this deep red state say TikTok represents an espionage threat more significant than any high-altitude balloon.
Whatever information the balloon gathered, it surely fell short of China's other surveillance tool, TikTok.
Now, once the bill reaches Montana governor's desk, he has 10 days to act on it. The governor hasn't commented specifically on this yet, but he's already banned the use of TikTok on state devices. And at that time, writing, we will defend the state of Montana against all who pose a threat to our security and way of life. Zinkley, back to you.
Important reporting. Gotti, thank you.
Turning to financial headlines now, and if you're thinking about going electric, there's an updated list of cars that qualify for tax credits.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us now with more financial headlines. Good morning, Silvana.
Zinkley, Lindsay, good morning to you. Yep, so the U.S. government's strict new guidelines on electric vehicles go into effect today, and only 6 models now qualify for the full $7,500 federal tax credit. It's the Cadillac Lyriq, the Chevy Bolt and Bolt EUV, some Tesla Model 3 and Model Y versions, and the Ford F-150 Lightning. The updated rules pertain to where EV batteries are made and cuts out China as an approved trading partner. Lululemon is exploring a sale of Mirror. That's the maker of connected fitness devices it bought for $500 million just 3 years ago. Bloomberg reports sales have fallen short of Lululemon's targets, and the company incurred losses on the business in the fourth quarter of last year. Lululemon had sold Mirror products in stores, but it's now shifted to a digital and app-based product rebranded as Lululemon Studio. And McDonald's is bringing back the Hamburglar mascot to promote a new burger recipe. So the fast food giant is rolling out improvements to the Big Mac, McDouble, and the classic cheeseburger, double cheeseburger, and hamburger. McDonald's says The sandwiches will have softer, pillowy buns, perfectly melted cheese, and juicier caramelized flavor from adding white onions to the patties while they're still on the grill. McDonald's has already implemented the changes in Australia, Canada, and Belgium, and is introducing them in some U.S. markets, including Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Phoenix, Denver, and Tucson. So look out for some
do
new
that
hamburgers.
story when we have been on set for an hour and 48 minutes. I am starving.
Believe me,
It's veggie burger.
very
I'm a veggie
hungry.
burger, Beyond Burger. That's a lot of things.
Sure thing.
We are getting a new look at the dramatic rescue of actor Jeremy Renner. Images captured by first responders in the aftermath of that January snowplow accident are revealing the actions they took to save the star's life. NBC News correspondent Kaylee Hartung has the details along with that dramatic footage.
Hey, good morning, Lindsay. As Jeremy Renner continues to recover from that accident that nearly killed him, we are getting a closer look at just how tense the situation was, with police and medics arriving to a harrowing site, stunned by what they found, and rushing to provide life-saving care. The newly released body cam video shows the dramatic aftermath of the January 1st snowplow accident near actor Jeremy Renner's house in Nevada that left him with 30 broken ribs, a pierced liver, and a collapsed lung.
Right where his blood is at, that's right where it all happened.
The video shows the large emergency response that saved Renner's life and offers more detail about exactly how Renner ended up being crushed by a snowplow after the actor tried to help his nephew.
That's when it started coming at me like full force. That's when he tried to jump back in there. He tried to jump on it into the thing, and it took him under.
Renner himself thought he was in grave danger in those moments.
If I was there on my own, that would have been a horrible way to die. But I wasn't alone. It was my nephew, sweet Alex, and the rest of the cavalry came.
He spent weeks recovering at renowned regional medical center. And just last week, he returned to the hospital to, quote, revisit the amazing group of people who saved my life. And against all odds, he stepped out onto the red carpet for the premiere of his Disney Plus series, Renovations. A miracle recovery for Renner, who waited 22 minutes for emergency crews to reach him in Lake Tahoe amidst difficult winter conditions.
Are there any obvious injuries?
Yeah, oh my God, yes. He said he's got ribs issues.
Okay.
His right chest. Yeah, his right chest and the upper torso. His ribs look like they might be crushed. He's got a head wound as well.
From the brink of death to bouncing back in true superhero spirit. And Jeremy Renner has joked his calendar is now wide open as this accident completely derailed his plans for the year. But he's excited about that new Disney Plus reality series that serves children's charities. And as for his health, Renner says some good came of the accident. It helped him finally quit smoking. Now, he still has a long road ahead, but what a remarkable recovery he has already made. Lindsay.
Just incredible. Kaylee, thank you so much for that story.
And coming up, making history. The stars of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Bad Cinderella open up about the role that they say is a dream come true.
And she's not the only one. Our very own Joe Fryer is here to show us how they're putting a new spin on the classic story. There he is, Joe.
Hey,
You're going to give us the story in a little bit. Stick with us.
All right, on today's Good Talker, we're talking about rats. The rats are fighting back, specifically in New York. Just last week, New York City appointed its first ever rat czar to crack down on rodent populations. Well, now on behalf of the furry population, rat ambassadors are starting to squeak up. That's right, rat ambassadors. Meet Runa, an African giant pouched rat at the San Diego Zoo, who's doing her best to counter the bad press. She is one of many rodents placed at 3 U.S. zoos, and they're showing off their traits such as sniffing that they can use to potentially detect diseases and stop trafficking. The rats were provided by a Tanzania-based organization with the hopes of broadening people's understanding of these animals and gain support.
Do you see how big that rat is compared to that hand? That is the size of a cat.
See, those are the stereotypes they're trying to overcome.
Sorry, just what you thought you needed.
Yeah.
Rat video, bright and early.
Rats. So there you have it.
All right, now to our series, Flipping the Script, featuring people on screen, on stage, and behind the scenes, shining a spotlight on diversity.
Enter the two leading stars of Broadway's Bad Cinderella, the newest Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, which puts a new twist on a classic fairy tale. Well, our very own Joe Fryer got to speak with two of them and joins us now. Joe, good morning.
Hey there, good morning. So it was just 2 days ago that the longest running show on Broadway, Phantom of the Opera, closed after a 35-year run. It was composed, of course, by the legend Andrew Lloyd Webber, who already has a new musical, Bad Cinderella. It opened just last month, featuring 2 young stars, Lynette Hinau, who went from business administration degree to Broadway performer, and Jordan Dobson, who, like Hinau, is originating his first leading role on The Great White Way.
Call me a wretch or witch, well, choose one. Every fairy tale for sure can use one.
We all know the story of Cinderella, but we probably don't know the story of Bad Cinderella. What are the big differences here?
It's very much an unconventional fairy tale. Cinderella doesn't leave with the prince and her glass slipper like we all know. She's a rebel in her town because she's an outcast. She doesn't fit in because she doesn't want to conform to society and be the way everyone is, dress the same way, compose herself the same way. She's her own person and demands that respect and takes up that space.
Do you feel some of her in you?
Absolutely. She empowers me too. I feel more comfortable in my own skin, demanding the space that I take up and kind of respecting myself in that way, so I really love that.
So this is a musical by someone folks may have heard of named Andrew Lloyd Webber, an up-and-comer in the business.
Possibly.
What does it mean to be in an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical?
Oh my goodness, it feels so surreal. I mean, it's just a dream come true.
And for Lynette Hinau, it's a history-making dream. She's the first Latina to originate a lead role in an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical.
It's much bigger than me, and I only pray and hope that it opens doors for other people to see themselves represented on stage, because until in Heights, I never had that. And especially in TV, for a princess, I didn't have a princess that I could look up to that looked like me, sounded like me, or that I could really relate to. To be a part of that is just the honor of my life.
Cinderella is a show that in some form or fashion has been performed many times over many decades. For you guys, what does it mean to have different voices telling these stories?
When we leave the show every night and go out to the stage door and see fans of the show who are waiting, and we see young kids of color look at us and say, oh, I can do that, or I see myself up there, I think that is the biggest gift of what we do.
I used to sit all the way up there, crying hysterically when I would watch a show because I wanted to be up here, and especially when I finally saw myself represented on stage, where knowing in my heart that I could do it and that I could be up here. And so to see that now in this position, to see someone going through that and expressing that to me, it's full circle, and I don't take it lightly.
My understanding is when you were younger, you applied to various theater schools and heard a lot of no's and maybe thought, well, I got to go a different path. How did you get back to your dream, and what's your advice to people who also have that dream that feel like, I don't know if I can get there?
I was told to, audition for these 3 schools. They're the best schools in the country. I was like, okay, I'll audition. If I get in, great. And if not, it's not meant to be. I'm not good enough. That's okay. I didn't get in. Well, I got notice of the open call for On Your Feet, the Gloria Estefan musical, that they were looking for Latinos. What do I have to lose? I took a selfie on my iPhone 4, printed it at Walgreens, and just had theater experience from high school. And I went, and it just reminds me, there's this saying that we say in Spanish, lo que es para ti, nadie te lo quita. What's meant for you is yours, and no one can take that from you. Sometimes it is that opportunity that is meant for you and is there, and you just have to trust yourself enough to go and do it.
Jordan, what's your advice for people who are looking at you right now and saying, I want to do that, I want to be just like Jordan?
Find a community to lean on. I lean on Lynette, like this is our first time originating lead roles together, and so we're sharing so much of the experience together and sharing our nerves and our excitement. So even being here, you need that sense of community. You need people to lean on, because you can't do anything alone.
Great messages there. Our thanks to Lynette Hinau and Jordan Dobson for taking time to talk with us. Bad Cinderella now on Broadway at the Imperial Theater. I also love that they say they had chemistry tests when they were figuring out who was going to get cast, and that they just knew when they were working together in the audition, the chemistry that they had together.
You can tell how much they support each other.
Exactly.
So important.
Just so important.
Joe Fryer. Thank you.
No problem.
Well, that does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.